Off Limits is the money podcast that blows up stereotypes, showing you that managing money doesn't have to be hard.
We want you to thrive, not only with your money, but in every part of your life.
What you will get out of this podcast is real, relatable, and relevant tips and strategies that you can apply today. Hi, I'm Donald Raymond, and this is
Christine Spiak. We are money coaches, business owners, and colleagues who are passionate about helping you become more of who you are. So if you're ready, join us.
Episode 8, we're talking about being the tortoise. What does it mean to be a tortoise? Are we talking about an episode of Wildcrats here? Do you know who they are? My son loves them.
No clue. No clue.
You don't know the Wildcrats? Wow. Okay. So plug for anyone with a, I'll call it less than 10 years old, start watching Wildcrats. You'll find it on PBS Kids or anywhere you can find streaming online. It's a show about animals. These brothers run around and they just do a show about wildlife, conservation, education of different animals and different environments all around the world. They travel, and then they take their travels and morph it into an animated series. And my son is addicted. He watches it every morning before school.
All right. Well, keep that in mind when the next time I'm with my nieces who are 6 going to be 7. Maybe we'll be turning on PBS and watching this show.
They know who Wildcrats are.
So the tortoise in my mind, which, when we hear words, phrases, we all get different mental images and pictures. For me, I get a picture of truly a tortoise plodding along a path and just slowly going. And the reason why that picture in my mind just repeats over and over, it's kind of like if you're going to watch a movie again, for me, it's the tortoise just keeps replaying in my mind. It's because when you go slow and you plan and you think of your life as a marathon instead of a sprint, then you can achieve so much more. You can be present in everyday circumstances. You're not the hare. You're not just going so fast in this world that we live in.
So you just said it, the hare, right? So that's what we're talking about. It's that story, right? We've all heard it, the tortoise and the hare. And every little kid that reads that story or has that story read to them immediately thinks before that story's over that the hare's going to win, right? The hare is faster. There's no way that the tortoise could win this race. But the tortoise does. I hope I'm not spoiling this for anybody.
Spoiler alert.
I hope that was a joke. It was intended to be rhetorical. But yeah, the tortoise wins, right? We know this story, we know the outcome, and we know why. And it's a lot of the things that you just said, Christine, right? We're being intentional. We're going into things well informed. You can't do those things if you're rushing, if you're busy, right? You have to take that moment. And some of the advice that we've given in previous episodes that I've given in coaching sessions is to take that pause, right? The power in the pause, having that moment between an impulse and a decision so that you hopefully give yourself time to make the right decision, right? And that's going to mean different things for different people in different scenarios. And that's kind of the point, right? Is that there is no one answer, one and done. We talk about this with budgeting. You can't just make one budget and then use that budget.
Set it and forget it.
Yeah, there's no such thing as set it and forget it. Even the things that there are some things that we set and forget, so to speak, but if you truly leave them alone and just let them do their thing, eventually they're no longer usable, right? They don't work the way intended if you don't interact with them again. So I think we do. We have to be intentional. We have to slow down. This world we live in is so fast paced right now. And there's so much happening so fast, it's easy to get caught up in that. And I think, if you just look at manufacturing, for example, I come from a background of manufacturing, and this mentality of the word that is used a lot, and it's used in a positive way, but it leaves a very negative impression, is urgency. There's this sense of urgency, and that's oftentimes promoted as a good thing. But what it creates is this speed of working, but not really yielding much in the way of results, right? Everybody's busy, but what are they getting for their efforts?
Yeah, I think urgency, and I also immediately associate it with frenzy.
Yeah.
We're just in this state of frenzy where are we making the best possible choices, decisions in those moments of everything is just going so fast?
Yeah, and let me ask, so I'm going to ask everybody, think about this question while I'm asking it, but Christine, I'm going to put you on the spot here. So have you ever found yourself in the situation where you're in that moment of urgency, even if you haven't identified it yet, but you're in a situation where you're making a decision, and then you've made that decision, and now it becomes okay, what's next, and then what's next, and then what's next, what's next, what's next, and you had a goal going into that activity, but then when you finally have time to breathe, you look at where you are and where you intended to be going, and you couldn't be any farther from your original target. Can you think of any examples? Like, has that ever happened to you?
Absolutely. And I think of it happens a lot within my business because
There you
I'll
go.
get a new idea and I'll want to pursue that. And then before I know it, I've gone down this rabbit hole of heading in this direction. And then when I kind of stop and pause, I'm like, well, is this really the path that I want to go down?
Mm.
Or is this just the path that I took? Because in that state of urgency, it seemed like the best choice in the moment.
Yeah, it's
I
like,
do try to sleep on it.
mhm.
If there's a big decision that I'm going to make, even if my intuition is saying, yeah, this is the way to go, this is the thing to do, I have always found in my life when I sleep on something, the clarity that comes with that has been so valuable. And then times that I am impulsive and make that rash decision in that moment of trying to do something fast, it either bites me or it could have been done better
Right.
if I had just waited and thought it through a little bit more, or I didn't forget something. Maybe I wanted to, let's talk about this example of maybe it's like updating your resume. You're so fed up
Mm.
with your job, you're just tired of being there. So you quickly put together a resume, you quickly apply for a job on Indeed, and then you realize, well, wait a minute, because I did this so fast, I didn't really think about all these other attributes and values that I could be adding to this resume that really, makes me shine more. I just did this in such a hasty way.
There's another aspect to what you're just describing. So recently, I was watching one of my feeds on YouTube, and Ken Coleman pops up, and he's talking about sort of this next wave of the Great Resignation, where people are leaving their jobs, and not that it's necessarily going to happen in any specific time or anything, but he had the opportunity to interview several people who had left their jobs, and what he found absolutely floored me. So what you just said, you jump on Indeed, you're looking for a job, you're in the moment, and you think, either I just need this job, or I need a job, or I need a different job, or whatever that looks like for these individuals. What was happening is people were so upset with their current situation in their job that they were taking the action to go get a new job before ever mentioning anything about their frustration with their supervisors.
Mm.
So this Ken Coleman, if you know him, you know who I'm talking about. He interviewed several people who had done this and asked, did you write down some of your frustrations, some of your issues, and talk to your leadership about that? No, we didn't. So then he takes it a step farther. He actually interviews the leadership. Hey guys, do you know what's going on? And they said we had no idea. And then he asked the follow-up question: would you have made accommodations if given the opportunity to keep these employees? Overwhelmingly, the answer, now who knows, right? I mean, they're answering the question, maybe they're saving face, but very genuinely, several of these leaders, who are being interviewed, and this is video, so you can kind of read body language, and it's hopefully it's as advertised, not being scripted. These people haven't been prepped, but overwhelmingly, they all said absolutely. We don't want to have this turnover. We don't want to lose these people. Now, there's people that are going to leave, right? Regardless of the situation. There's opportunities that take you away from job to job to job, right? And all that's fine. And you should do that. You should pursue opportunities. But if you've got a frustration, I just want to say, take a moment, slow down, try to schedule some time with your supervisor, and give them an opportunity to fix that before you make the decision to leave, because that really should be part of that decision. Do I
Absolutely.
do I have
Absolutely.
do I have an opportunity to make an improvement before I force myself into this decision to leave? Now, leaving may still be the right outcome, right? You may decide that at the end of all this, that's really the only option, and that's okay, right? Whatever the
It's
outcome
a
is.
very slippery slope though,
It can be.
because
It can be.
what we're doing in this moment is it's the story in our head of, well, I'm not going to talk to my supervisor potentially because they're not going to change, they're not going to care. Let me just, kind of like wipe my hands of this and find a
Mhm.
new job. Or maybe, maybe it's within your money. Maybe it's, I'm just going to do this now because I deserve it. I work hard. I'm going to, put this vacation on a credit card, and I don't care if it takes me 2 or 5 years to pay for it, but I deserve it and I'm going to do it.
Yep.
Versus if you slow down and you think about it, do I really want to be paying for a vacation that we take 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now because I wasn't able to afford it at the time that we took it?
But let's make it like super simple for people. So I think about cooking, right? If we need to eat, we're going to eat every day. I actually enjoy cooking. What I don't enjoy is I don't know, what we're going to have for dinner. And then we decide maybe like this idea, whatever the dish is, and then we look in the pantry in the fridge, we don't have the ingredients to make the dish, right? So now it's a last minute scramble. I'm running to the grocery store, or we're going to make something different that I do have, that we have the ingredients to make, and I'm rushing through cooking. I'm not enjoying the experience. I'm not making something that I actually want to eat. And so basically at the end of the day, I'm just surviving, right? Rather than thriving. Versus contrast that, do a little bit of prep, maybe plan out a few meals for the week, and then Thursday night rolls around, you already know what you're making. Maybe you work from home, so you were passing through the kitchen and you went ahead and hit the preheat on the oven, so it's ready to go. You got a couple of pans warming on the stovetop. You get all your ingredients out. You got the right ingredients, fresh ingredients. You've got an opportunity, and you build time in your schedule to do a little bit of prep, and that experience for me is so much more enjoyable, and I get as much enjoyment and satisfaction out of preparing the food and cooking the food as I do eating the food, and then it just always seems to taste that much better. So, um, for me, that's just a real simple kind of daily experience and exercise where slowing down and taking the time and being a little more intentional and not forcing myself into this mad dash sprint at the end where the hare loses the race because he thought he could sit around and do nothing because he was so much faster, while the tortoise just slowly made his way toward that finish line and ended up with so much margin that the hare couldn't catch back up.
I absolutely love what you just said, and it all resonates with me because one, I love to cook and I love to plan. Every weekend, we meal plan for the week. We shop on the weekends, and then we know these are the meals we're making for the week. And even if our week changes and we
Mhm.
switch up the order in which we planned it out, that's okay. But the food is in the house. We're not running to the store. So I like everything that you said, and I think you can apply that framework to anything in your life. And so if you find that you're always running behind with figuring out what you're going to do for your meals, or you're running behind with your money, let's say, you know that the kids' sports are coming up and you're going to have to pay a fee, or you know the brakes are going to have to be repaired, or the tires are going to have to be replaced on your vehicle, but you don't equate that to actually spending money on those things, which means you're not carving out room in your budget for those things, then you're just behind again. And then
Yep.
you're not enjoying it. It's like taking the car to the mechanic to get the brakes replaced is really a hassle. It's annoying. And now I'm getting a little anxious about it because I didn't plan for this big expense. And we all know tires can cost a lot of money. But if you own a vehicle, having a car maintenance savings fund where you're putting money into that fund every month
Yep.
will give you the ability to, when it comes time to replace the tires, brakes, windshield wipers, registration, whatever it is, you go into that account and pay for it, just like
That's right.
Donald explained with planning meals for the week. So putting in, or not really putting in, giving yourself the ability to slow down today to do the planning, whether it's the meal planning, the budget planning your goals, short term and long term goals, so you know that they align with your values and truly where you want to, the direction that you want to head in, will all pay off dividends in the future. And if you keep in mind that this is your journey and not to try to keep up with your neighbor or whomever on social media, it doesn't matter where they are in their life. First of all, you have no idea what goes on in their life. You're not walking in their shoes. You don't know how much debt they have or how much angst they have in their life or stress. You just see the good things that they want you to see. And when we compare ourselves to those
Imposter.
uh, Yeah, I mean, it's really it's not a good place to make decisions from at all. And I like how you just mentioned, the imposter syndrome.
That's what I was hearing as you were talking. I was thinking it just started repeating and echoing in my head was imposter syndrome, and I've struggled, many times with the imposter syndrome. I think I still struggle with it, but now it's almost like one of those. It's like a callus, right? Like I just know how to deal with it. I've built up a tolerance to it because it hits me all the time. You shouldn't be doing this. You can't do this. Other people have success in that area, but you'll never have success in this area. Why do my neighbors just had their driveway pressure washed yesterday. So their driveway is like bright white. It looks like a brand new driveway, right? Like they just poured the concrete. Mine is dirty. It's 15 years old and it's got grime growing on it. Not growing on it, but it's a used driveway. You can let little things like that sneak in, right? Like now I could run out and hire the same guy or somebody else to pressure wash my driveway, right? Do I need to do that? Does my driveway have to look like my neighbor's driveway? It's a silly little thing, but like all of these inputs are coming at us at lightning speed, right? You've just got input after input after input, and they're all competing for your attention and your response, right? So I think learning just that habit, right, of sitting back, taking a breath, being lots of leadership development tools talk about being the last person to speak, right? And it's a discipline thing. And I think you can apply not speaking, but this, be the last let your decision, your response, your reaction to something be the last something, right? Force yourself to be the last one to react, the last one to take the action. Not all the time, right? I mean, when we use this word urgency, I've actually done a training in my past life. Again, when I was in manufacturing, we did this whole thing about urgency and when it's good and when it's bad, and behaving with a sense of urgency. And again, many times that gets taken out of context, and there are absolutely situations. So hazmat response is something I used to be certified to do, and that's hazardous materials, right? So if you have a chemical that's spilled, people are dying potentially, and you have to respond. So you have to have that sense of urgency. It is literally a matter of life and death in those situations. So you have to take those actions, but you're prepared to take those actions. You're not operating from a position of being unprepared. You've done trainings for years in the unlikely event that one of these things might happen, right? So you're going in very prepared, and only the people that are prepared are allowed to take those actions and respond in those times of urgency. And so you can apply that to your life. Are you prepared when it comes time to change the tires on your car? Are you prepared to do the maintenance on your home? Are you prepared for Christmas? Are you prepared for your vacation? There's so many things that we know are going to happen, and I mentioned hazmat as sort of a life and death extreme situation. The reality is in manufacturing, there are so many bad things that could potentially happen that it's just a matter of time before one of them happens. And so are you prepared for those events? And I think that's where the tortoise just keeps taking one step at a time toward the finish line, never deviating from that path. He knows that eventually he is going to cross that line. He is preparing with every single step to win the race. The hare doesn't. The hare takes breaks. The hare, gets distracted. The hare does whatever he wants because he just assumes that everything's going to work out fine, right?
The hair is shooting from the hip.
Shooting from the hip.
That's what I'm hearing. What you're saying and what you're explaining. We can be prepared and act urgent and act quickly and swiftly, or we can shoot from the hip, not have a plan, and then
And to me,
have
that's
the
how it ties
results
back
follow.
into you mentioned the budget. So we bring all this back to personal finance, right? And now we're gonna it's off limits, right? We're talking about your money again. You can be prepared. You can prepare for all those situations. And then we've got that emergency fund. And that's the one that we find tends to be abused at times and really misunderstood. What is that emergency fund for? It is not for replacing tires on your car. It is not for replacing the air conditioner in your home. It is not for any of these things that you can predict. You can't predict the day and the time and the season and the location, but you know that these things are coming. You know that they're going to happen. So be prepared. Prepare yourself, set money aside, start funding these different accounts. The maintenance one, I love, you were talking about that, and this is a free tip. It wasn't on our list today, but as you were talking about maintenance on the vehicle, we have that fund set up. And originally, I had the vehicle maintenance fund separate from the vehicle insurance fund, but we pay insurance every 6 months and we change tires probably every year and a half, 18 months. And I really just didn't. It didn't feel good to put money into the maintenance fund and have it sitting there, and seeing it every month when I was setting up the account, and there just wasn't enough activity. And while it protected us and it allowed us to be intentional about taking care of vehicle maintenance when we needed to, I didn't. I just. It never felt right. And so the adjustment that I made was I combined those two accounts. So it all is in one account now. It's insurance and vehicle maintenance, and every so often, money flows into that account every month, but every so often money flows out, whether I'm paying an insurance bill or putting tires on a car, doing an oil change or replacing suspension components or whatever it is, right? The dog chewed on the seatbelt and I need a new seatbelt. Whatever those items are, just come out of that account. And all of those actually are real things. They happen to me, but maybe they don't happen to everybody. But yes, dogs can chew through seatbelts. But we just need to be prepared for that. That could have been an emergency. It could have created urgency and anxiety and financial stress, but it doesn't have to.
It doesn't anymore. And I like how you mentioned your dog because people don't
The
realize
dog ate it.
how much their pets actually cost them,
Mhm.
right? They get a puppy, they know they're going to be buying food, maybe an annual vet appointment. But I have talked to, and not just in my professional life working with clients, but family members, right?
Mhm.
Or friends who are taking their pets to the vet for very expensive, very costly procedures or just things that happen within their home because the pet destroyed it. So in your case, it was the seatbelt in your car. And it's a real thing that happens to people with pets, but they don't account for that. They don't have that pet savings account that they can just dip into when they need it.
Or even the 6-month checkup, right? If you've got a pet, a dog, a cat, a fish, I don't know, a snake. People get weird pets these days, but um, whatever it is, there's a cost associated with that. You got to feed it. You got to take care of it. You got to make sure it has its shots. Dogs have to be registered, and so at least where we live, and so there's all these costs, right? And you can go way down the rabbit hole there too, right? With how much you spend on your pet, but you do have to make a decision on what the value of the pet is to the overall picture, right? And what's more important and where your priorities are going to be. So you can take very good care of your pet without going overboard, but you can also go overboard, and that I believe tends to happen when you don't plan. If you don't plan, then everything that comes along is a possible option for your pet. And if you're just spending without a plan, then every time you see a new toy, you get it. Every time you have an opportunity to, do doggy daycare or a doggy day spa that your friend told you about, or we have I pick on this a little bit. I know the owner, and she knows that I pick on her, so it's okay. But there's a doggy daycare of sorts here in our county, and we live just outside of Atlanta, in Georgia. And so there's lots of quote unquote city dogs that never get to experience the country lifestyle. And she has found an opportunity to take advantage of that need and has provided the country lifestyle for city dogs. And city dog owners will pay, in my opinion, too much, but to each his own, to have their dogs experience life in the country for a couple of days. And so she runs a business dedicated to those people. So there is if you want to run a business, lots of people will tell you just identify a need, solve it, right? Pretty simple.
Yeah, I absolutely love hearing about other businesses, what people do for a living,
Yeah,
because it never ceases to amaze me that,
that's
people
right.
are thinking differently than I think for sure. And they have ideas. And like you said, if there's a need out there, you can create the business model for it. So
Solve a
I
need.
think
That's
it's
all you got to
I
do.
think it's very interesting that she was able to create that business model and how great for her that she's
Absolutely.
spending time in the country and fresh air with animals.
Hmm.
I mean, come on.
Yeah. Well, and
It doesn't get
it's got to be good for the dogs too. I don't take that away from them. I just think it's interesting that you choose to live in a city with an animal that you wish could live in the country. You've got an option here. You could just move to an
the
area
irony,
that
yeah, the irony of it all.
it is. Yeah, it's very interesting to
I
me.
hear you. So I hope what our listeners are hearing today is I know we've talked about planning a lot, and I know we've talked about the idea of being the tortoise and not being impulsive like the hare, shooting from the hip or feeling like I'm just going to take advantage of every want I have in
Yeah.
life because I live once and I deserve it. I work hard and whatever way you rationalize spending money or spending your time or spending your energy. What I hope our listeners are taking away from this episode is if you slow down and be the tortoise, do some planning, pause and evaluate, right, where you are currently and where you want to go, then really your actions will align with what you want in life versus just being on this hamster wheel of I'm going so fast but I'm really not getting
Yeah.
anywhere. So for me, the tortoise, the picture I have hanging in my bathroom cupboard was a card somebody sent me once, and it's a very beautiful artwork, painting of a tortoise on a path walking past poppy fields headed towards trees. And I probably don't look at it every day because it's been hanging in my bathroom cupboard for years now. But I did this morning because I knew we were filming this episode. And truly, that to me is contentment. This tortoise is content on this path, headed towards its future, enjoying life, stopping smelling the roses, not feeling like you have to keep up with the Joneses or always just be impulsive by living in the moment, right?
Yeah.
There is a time and place for that. We're not saying never live in the moment, never make a urgent or impulsive action in your life. But if that is overwhelmingly the majority of how you're living your life, then going back to Donald's earlier point of making dinner every night probably isn't fun for you and your household, right? If you're always in that moment, it's 5 o'clock. What am I going to cook?
Rush,
What am I
rush,
feeding the
scramble,
kids tonight?
scramble. Yeah.
Now I'm spending more money because instead of going to the grocery store to buy my groceries for the week, I'm running to a convenience store and I'm
Exactly.
picking up the things that I need. So you're just perpetuating this. I don't know if drama is the right word, but maybe Donald can help me out with this word of you're living in this heightened state of,
I think it causes stress and
spending more
anxiety.
money.
Yeah,
Yeah, there you
it all
go.
falls in the category of stress and anxiety, and it's
Yes,
unnecessary,
thank
right?
you.
There are things that, just like with the urgency, we talked about urgency, and if it's life or death, that is urgent, right? That is very, very urgent. And so there are things that just inherently induce stress, right, and anxiety, and those things are always going to be there. So why would you want to invite that into other areas of your life where it's avoidable, right?
Right.
And the tortoise, he walked by the hare. I'm remembering more of the story. I love you sharing the picture, that you have in your house of the tortoise. If you get a picture of that, I'll make sure it makes it into the episode so people can see that picture. But if I remember the story correctly, the tortoise walks by the hare at one point, and the hare is actively trying to distract the tortoise, saying, "Come over here, come check this out, get off the path. You don't need to spend all your time in the race. Look at me, I'm sitting here hanging out, chilling, having a good time, right? You can be like me." And the hare is doing a couple of things. He's bragging a little bit and kind of showing his true colors and being and the ego is coming out. But the other thing he's doing is trying to sabotage the race, right? He wants the tortoise to become distracted and get off the path, and the tortoise takes fewer steps, slower steps, but never stops moving. And the key to this whole formula, Christine, you mentioned it, the word action. We have to take actions. If the tortoise just stood at the start line, he doesn't win the race, right? But the tortoise never stopped moving. He wasn't moving fast, but he was moving very intentionally. He knew where he was going. He knew what his job was. He knew what the task was. And for it's not his whole life, but for that activity, for that event, he was very clear on the goal and the actions that were necessary to achieve the goal. And the hare maybe wasn't as focused, wasn't as clear on what the goal was. He just kind of assumed that the win was his for the taking, and he decided to stop and enjoy life or smell the flowers along the way, and he ended up indulging a little bit too much, right? So I think taking that action, being very clear on where you're going, is so critical, and not to make that. I don't want that to be anxiety inducing. If you don't know where you're going, that's okay, and maybe even good, right? Because it opens up lots of possibilities. You can have these discovery conversations with your friends, your family, your spouse. You can have that dialogue around why, right? What is the why? Get clear, get focused, and really think of it like a microscope, right? If you're zoomed way out, you can see a lot, but it's not very clear as you get closer and closer, and then microscopic, right? You want that clear of a focus on your priorities, what your why is, and that's going to change too, which is again why it's so important to keep that mindset, keep that focus on where you're going, and just make those little adjustments as necessary.
I wholeheartedly agree with all of that. Very well said. I think this is a great time in our episode to transition into our quote and next step in book because I think we made our point.
I had to be
Embrace your
careful. I almost gave
tortoise.
away the book, so I had to pause there for a second.
So leave this episode embracing your tortoise. The quote that hopefully will kind of set you on that path is by someone unknown. Direction is so much more important than speed. Many are going nowhere fast. So think about that as you take your next step, which is going to be for this episode. Plan out your short term and your long term goals. Short
Yes,
term, 6 months to 1 year, long term, 1 year to 5 years. Just like do a brain dump. Like I like that visual a lot because it's to me, I always have a lot going on in my mind, a lot swarming around, swirling around up there. So get it down on paper, just
absolutely.
financial, non-financial. Like what do I want to try to accomplish in the next 6 months to 1 year? And then beyond that, 1 year to 5 years. And let that be your North Star. So when you're plodding along like the tortoise, you're content. You're not being impulsive. You're staying the path. Even if you get derailed from life, right? That's going to happen, but you always know where you're headed. And you can, of course, readjust along the way if you need to. So, Donald, why don't you share the books that and we have 2 books this time
Yeah,
that we're
that's
going to
right.
share with
So
you.
so you could probably guess one of them, and it's the Tortoise and the Hare, the original story, and that's by help me with the name here. It's
So
a
it's an
fable
Aesop's
series,
fable. Yes.
Aesop's Fable.
Yep.
And then the other book we're going to recommend is called The Infinite Game, and the author is Simon Sinek. Many of you may have heard of him and or read the book already, and if you have, read it again if it's been a while. If you don't have a copy, get a copy. If you've never heard of it, look it up. It's a great book, and it really embraces. Christine, I love what you said. You said embrace your inner tortoise, and it focuses on that without saying it, right? It talks about just being intentional and having this mindset where the variables do keep changing, which means your reaction, your response to those variables needs to also update frequently and often. And the other thing about the one deviation we'll take away from this race where the tortoise and the hare are engaged in this event is that the race of life, the race of what we're talking about with this active intentional lifestyle really never ends, and that's what the book is mainly focused on is this infinite mindset where you don't ever actually finish the race, but you do know where the racetrack is. You do know what direction you're going, and so those are our key takeaways. Your race is really never over.
It's really not.
Yeah,
It's not over until it's over, and we wish you all a long, healthy, prosperous life that you can enjoy, that you feel like this is the life I'm choosing to live and nothing is holding me back.
and a legacy that continues even after life,
Yeah,
right? Because
absolutely.
we all have
Like one of
family
the
that we're leaving
things,
behind. We want to make sure that they're taken
yes.
care of as well.
Yep, yep. And not only our family, but what about our community? One of my
Absolutely.
goals, at least for my business, is I really want to start a scholarship fund for
Oh, I like that.
entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So for, that high school student who college is not the right step or, the necessarily the best fit or the next right step for them, maybe they really are this entrepreneur at heart and they have that entrepreneurial spirit. I really want to start a scholarship fund to help those individuals start out their life post high school.
That's awesome. Well, you'll do it. It's on your list now.
It's on my list. It's been on my list for a while. So I am really excited to end this episode because I can't wait to tell our listeners about episode 9. We are doing our very first interview of the Off Limits podcast. And I'm going to tease everybody with the intro that we've written to introduce our guest coming up in 2 weeks. As a single mom of 2 children, Christine Golden found herself stressed out by her finances with no idea how to improve her situation. As a high school social studies teacher, Christine is passionate about setting her students up for success, whether it's in the classroom, through the many clubs she advises, or as a coordinator for Cinderella's Closet, which is an initiative that allows students to find their dream dress for proms and formal dances who otherwise would not be able to afford such gowns. Christine has become the hero of her own life. And I'm getting the goosebumps because I worked with Christine for 6 months now, and she truly has become the hero of her own life. She did it by creating new healthy money habits. and she is well on her way to achieving financial freedom. We can't wait to welcome her, and we're really looking forward to this interview, and we hope you are too, because maybe, just maybe, from hearing her story, maybe there's pieces that you'll identify with, and maybe there's hope you'll hear, and maybe for you, hope will start there.
It always helps to hear how other people are, engaged and dealing with some of these things. It's easy to talk about them after the fact or share other people's stories, but to hear it from the source, I'm really looking forward to meeting her. I haven't met her yet. You guys are messing with me by having the same name. We'll have to figure that out.
I know.
But we'll figure that out. We'll navigate it, and it'll be awesome. First, like you said, first interview of the Off Limits podcast, and we hope to do many more. So stay tuned.
We do. Yep. And then just to kind of give everybody a preview also, we're going to end our season with episode number 10, and that's going to be a best of. So all of our content that we've brought to you so far, we really kind of want to
we'll condense it all into one episode for you. We'll try to get you all the best pieces in one convenient episode. So yeah.
Yep. And maybe
look for
some
that
bloopers
as well.
too.
Maybe. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if I'm comfortable sharing my bloopers, but we'll see.
I am. Let's share them. Let's get it out there.
Fair enough.
All right. As always, it's a pleasure. Thank you, Donald, for your time today.
Same here. Take care. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Off Limits.
Beyond the podcast, we are money coaches who want to help you.
So if you are looking for help managing your money, use the links in the description below to contact either of us and learn how coaching can help you thrive.
Lastly, please help us to spread the word by subscribing, leaving a comment, and sharing our podcast with your friends and family.